I'd like to welcome Craig to the stage. Craig is the founder of Revenue Performance Management Group International and is one of Australia's leading sales, marketing and strategic business consultants. Craig specialises in building profitable revenue streams and fixing underperforming marketing and sales functions. And he tells me he has the scars and experience from doing both. Please welcome Craig.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. You know, although we originally called this morning's session the Sales Performance Forum, you'll notice that we've relabelled it in some of the presentations to what your sales manager's really up against. And as someone who's spent a large chunk of my working life up till now selling stuff and more recently helping other people sell more of their stuff, I find the title to be particularly apt because I actually don't think enough people running businesses today know enough about what it's actually like to sell stuff or manage people who do. There aren't too many people who would argue that the business landscape is changing fundamentally and in ways that we don't fully understand. And although the majority of businesses are doing it pretty tough, I don't think a lot of them have taken enough time to get inside why it is as tough as it is. I can assure you it's never been as hard to sell as it is now. And by that I mean sell just about anything. 2 years ago, I would have excluded companies in the mining and banking sectors from that statement, but not now. There are some really interesting macro trends contributing to making life difficult for sellers, but the major one is this. Fred Hassan said that statement back in 2006, before he took over Sharing Ploughs and took their revenues from 8 billion to 18 billion in 4 years. And his words are as true today as they were back then. In fact, they're probably truer. And what he's saying is that the buyers' buying cycles and the sellers' selling cycles, which were once linked like an umbilical cord, have been severed. Basically by the internet, and more lately by social media and social networking. And that the information asymmetry in the buying, selling process and subsequent transaction that used to favour the sellers now favours the buyers, and it favours buyers heavily. Buyers across a host of industries are buying in new ways, and they're using new tools, and they've got more information than they've ever had before. And sellers, on the other hand, are still pretty much doing what they've always done as they've always done it. They're working harder than they ever have. It's not a matter of effort. There's no doubt about that. But the game's changed and the rules have changed. And buyers are playing by one set of rules and sellers are playing by an old set of rules. So much so that ever-increasing proportions of the average buyer's purchasing journey or purchasing cycle are now completed without any involvement from salespeople at all. What we find in just about every organisation we go into is that they have no idea what their buyers' journeys even look like, or therefore how to connect up with them. And the other point that Fred is alluding to is sales process. Now, we make our living unpacking and repacking what are for the most part broken sales processes. I'm prepared to bet that everyone in this room works in a business that has invested time and money into putting really solid processes into making your products or delivering your services or running your finances or managing your supply chains. But I'll bet you that hardly any of you can say the same thing about your marketing and sales. Funny, isn't it? When they're what generates the lifeblood of your company. And so these factors are now manifesting themselves in the revenue performance of more and more organisations. I'm just going to show you a handful of stats. Stats all over the place on this. But these come from our most recent Revenue Performance Index. There's no shortage of similar correlating data out there on the web about it. So 85% of organisations actually missed their revenue targets last year. That's the original targets, by the way, not the ones that get adjusted along the way because you're not making the original ones. No? This data comes from the index, which is, so you know, 497 companies, nearly 1,200 CEOs, CFOs and mainly sales directors. nearly half of all the sales reps don't make their target. In 2006, that number was 42% versus 58%, right? So the situation has actually worsened by 15%. That obviously varies by industry and business type, but that's the average across the sample data. Here are some interesting numbers. Any CFOs in the room today? No. Well, if there were, I wouldn't need to tell them about that sales forecasting is an oxymoron. Right. The third stat actually is the most interesting one for me, and Angela touched on it in her talk. You know, the average sales rep, and yes, I know some of them are pretty average, but the average sales rep got to 76% of their target last year. Now, before you go off and blame the reps, remember that he or she got there on about 11.5 hours of selling per week. Our stats are actually slightly better than the ones that Angela runs on. Now, if you change nothing else other than found them an extra 3.75 hours per week, they'd be over their target. Interesting, isn't it? What did they spend the other 69% of their time doing? Anyone want to take a guess? Sorry? Paperwork, yep. About a third on paperwork and admin. And the other third? Yeah, there's a fair bit of that. They actually spend their time marketing. They spend a third of their time marketing, doing their own demand generation. Hold that thought and come back to it. So in spite of 85% of companies not making their revenue targets, and the average miss, by the way, was 15, some miracle is apparently going to occur, because next year's average top line is going to go up by 15%, somehow. And that miracle, by the way, is going to be delivered by more salespeople, nearly 50% of whom aren't going to make their numbers. Did anyone see recently that Oracle missed their last quarter? I think it was 3% was a miss. Not picking on Oracle, but it's just very topical. Know what they blamed it on? Sorry? Yeah? If I had a gold star, you'd be getting one. No, they blamed it on their salespeople. They recruited apparently 3,000 new salespeople and they didn't sell enough stuff. Imagine my shock. The average Australian sales pipeline today converts at a rate of 2.4%. So for every 100 buyers who begin their journeys towards buying something, less than 3 make it to the end. As a process, therefore, the process which generates revenue, this is a process with a 97.6% error rate. In how many other parts of a business would a process that fails 97.6% of the time be tolerated? This one is. Why is that? And as you can see, it's been getting worse for some time, and that the decline was actually underway before the GFC, and the trend wasn't affected by the GFC. Now, before you all go reaching for the razor blades, the fact that this situation is so bad is actually the seed of an amazing opportunity, which I'll get to shortly, but a little bit more pain first. Here are the 3 most easily recognisable parts of the sales process. So you've got on the left leads that generate meetings or appointments. Don't get hung up on the terminology. Meetings or appointments, and in the middle you've got meetings or appointments that result in presentations or proposals or offers, and on the other side you've got offers that result in closures or wins. And you can see every one of those has been in decline for quite some time. And you multiply A by B by C to get you 2.4%. So it's a fairly damning situation, and it's been bad for a while. How does that play out in the real world? So this is a real conversation. I had it with a general manager from a bank. I won't name the bank. They had a program to get 100 new-to-bank customers in a 12-month period. One program running in New South Wales, parallel program running in Victoria. So 2 programs with the same set of objectives, 100 in each state. Okay, I said to them, what's your offer to close, or term sheet to close ratio? No idea. Never measured that. because we've never had to chase new business. Okay, so I'm just rounding it up here to make it simple. About 1 in 5. So they need to make 500 offers. Okay, appointment to offer ratio? Nope. A third, roughly, if you're operating at the benchmarks. So 1,500 appointments required. And a third conversion rate from leads to meetings. So they needed 4,500 leads to generate 1,500 meetings, first meetings by the way, that's not second, third and fourth ones, to get 500 offers out the door to win 100, if they operated at the benchmarks. Now this was a corporate and institutional part of the bank, targeting organisations roughly with revenue between 25 million and 500 million per year. Anyone spot the problem? Not enough market. There aren't 4,500 of those organisations in New South Wales and Victoria combined. Right? So, where do you think the 100 came from? Well, they had 25 bankers in the team. Surely they can get 1 a quarter each, can't they? Well, as a matter of fact, no, they can't, and they didn't. Some of you were kind enough to complete a short survey where we asked you those questions about your business before you came today, and I've just summarised them. So on the right is the average new revenue target across the BRW Top 500 Private, right? And I've just assumed a $100,000 average sale, just to pick a number. So if we were all in the same business together, we'd need 300 deals to close. Now, funnily enough, those who answered the survey think they're doing collectively 52% better than the benchmark, which is interesting. Anyway, so we need to generate 1,168 offers, 2,788 appointments, and 8,080 leads if we're going to make that $30 million. And that's just this year. Now, if we want the number to go up by 15% next year, and 15% presumably the year after, and so on and so forth, those numbers just need to keep coming through the pipe. It's a process. It's, as Angela said, it's about building a machine. Unfortunately, very, very, very few organisations do that. So, what is the response out there in the world? Hit the sales guys with sticks. More calls, more meetings, more people, more training, get a CRM, use the CRM. Right? That's what's going on out there. Funnily enough, and I'm not taking a stab at CRM and training, particularly not when Angela and Adam are sitting at the same table as me, right? But they are not the answer to this problem. They're definitely part of the answer to this problem. You have to have a CRM system. It has to be well implemented. And yet, yes, you need well-trained salespeople. But as you can see, it's not everything. Has anyone seen the movie Moneyball? Yeah? So what's Moneyball about? Yes, that's right. Good answer. Sometimes I get baseball, but it's not. It's not about baseball at all. It's about data and statistics and process. And it's about how a small group of guys turned 180 years of traditional thinking and just turned it on its head and basically changed an industry. And they changed not one industry, they've changed multiple industries. It's gone from baseball to basketball to the AFL, and now it's, funnily enough, come back into the business world. And it's about understanding where value is created. Fabulous quote comes out of the movie, and incidentally the book is better. And it's, when the numbers don't stack up, you have to change the game. And the numbers in the revenue game do not stack up anymore. Right? They are not stacking up. They haven't stacked up for some time. So it's now time to change the game. And that is, it's a game about measurement and process. Yes, all those other elements, traditional elements. You've got to have good marketing campaigns, you've got to have good communications, you've got to have good salespeople, you've got to have good execution, etc., etc. That's all still relevant. Right? But now it's about hooking that all up in process. unpacking what doesn't work, repack it so it does work. And then, as Ange said, make it into an engine, a machine that instead of producing cars or widgets, produces sales and produces them over and over again. Just going to finish off with, this is my version of the eye test. Please stay with me. I know it looks busy, but there's a simple message. Focus your eyes on the two red numbers down the bottom, okay? They are going to show you the increase in value in this company, okay? 230 million, that's the median revenue in the BRW top 500 at the moment. That's where I picked it from. It's just a business that's got 36 points of GP and 29% of sales in its overheads, doing about 5% EBITDA. Okay, it's an average kind of company. The revenue comes from those three steps that I described a minute ago, right? Lead to meeting, meeting to offer, offer to close. And those are the Australian benchmarks that are sitting there at the moment. So that's year one. Watch what happens when I do nothing else other than improve each of those three steps by 1%. And that's not financial trickery. I haven't done anything special there. Nothing up my sleeve, right? That's just the power of revenue process to transform value. Watch what happens when I do it 1% again. Okay? So that's the pain is that the numbers don't stack up. The opportunity is huge. And you don't have to get this extremely right to make a substantial improvement. Okay. So that's all from me. My message is that the game has changed. Now I'm just going to get Dave Hatt to come up here and hook up and show you a quick demo of how to get that kind of data that you need. So the game of revenue's changed, and it's a game for the moment where the buyers hold the aces. Okay. If you take anything out of what I've said, I'd like it to be this. This is not a problem that salespeople can solve, okay? Nor is it a problem that marketing can solve. What we are facing, regardless of which industry we're in, and that mining and banking are now in it with us, although they've got special circumstances, it's a problem that can't be addressed in silos, okay? It's strategic, it's structural, and it's organisational. It's about process and measurement and data, as much as it is about training and CRMs and campaigns and whatnot. So maybe even more so. And it therefore requires CEOs and boards to get involved. And, interestingly, CFOs. Because who owns process and measurement in most businesses? CFOs. And the biggest mistake you'll make is to leave it to marketing and sales. If they could have fixed it, they would have fixed it by now. So, Dave, just show you a quick demo of a little tool we've developed.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Excuse me, I'm the solutions manager in IBM for this part of the software, and I've known Craig for about 5 years. So we've put together an application based on the intellectual property the RPMGI group have put together, and it's the same software that is in use by literally thousands of customers within Australia, including, I think, the AFL, which you mentioned a moment ago. They use a similar sort of portal, analysing all their stats and all their marketing revenue and so forwards. From the point of view of pipeline management, though, it's really taking the entire process of tracking through the funnel and the recycling processes. People drop out of the funnel and perhaps jump back into the funnel later on, as they might decide to come back and buy more products, for example. So here we're looking basically at a web-based system. We also have versions that run natively on iPads and Android devices and mobile phones and so forth, but this is just a plain old web browser. And everything you see will basically happen live. So it connects up to all your data sources, including as a special connector for Salesforce.com, and we can take near real-time feeds of data. So here I'm looking at the entire revenue forecast. I'm logged in as a finance person. However, a marketing person might be looking at the top part of the funnel. So they can have their own portal. Now their portal might be just looking at their part of the process, from new names down to established credentials. And as you can see, looking at our actual data coming through, there's not much data, so I might swap that into my forecast. When I look at my forecast, it will update live, and we'll see it'll run against the entire database and tell me that we're performing a little bit better compared to our targets, but perhaps not as well as we should be. Now, the whole point about this is that as we're tracking these names going through the pipeline, we can then track them as they drop into bona fide sales opportunities. And again, our sales opportunities for the sales dashboard perhaps aren't trending as much as we would like them to be, but everything is entirely configurable so that we can actually run through some modelling. Now, to understand what's going on, if I jump into a report, you'll see that this is the same logic that Craig mentioned a moment ago. We're seeing, again, a bit of an eye test, I grant you, we're seeing the process of opportunities drop into the pipeline and eventually make it down to sales. We can see down here the predicted revenue and the amount of meetings that we need to take place to get that particular revenue. And of course, there's some pretty big, scary numbers by the time we get to the end of the year. So the power of the system actually, of course, is in the recycling process. So if we have a look at the way the engine works, it's actually also going to tell us, based on this data, how many predicted salespeople we need and what our shortage is based on our forecast. So again, some big, scary numbers. What the engine also does is it allows us to run a degree of modelling in this. Now, there's a modelling engine underpinning this. So if we have a quick look at the bare bones of what that modelling engine looks like, the modelling engine is, for those people who are technical, probably no one is in the room, it's an in-memory modelling engine. Now, what that means is that we can set the system up to capture data. So here we've got a screen where we can type in various different sales campaigns that we anticipate to have, all the various parameters around those, and have the system calculate in real time what we think that's going to do to our forecast. Now, of course, we can also do things like setting up our particular parameters. Now, I'm opening up this screen, which is just a raw look at the engine. And as I go into the system, I might decide that in year 2, we probably need a target of $9 million worth of sales. And as I do that, you'll see the system's automatically cascading that down into $750,000 per month in year 2. And I might also go into the system and say, well, what if we sold for an average of $90,000? And it's going to go away and it's going to update my targets for me automatically. That's what the engine is going to do. It's then going to look at the actual numbers of how many deals we're going to do per month based on that particular average and work backwards. So there's a reverse calculation engine built into the application. All of that allows me to go back and commit the data and go back and see that appear on the application screens that I showed you before. So the system will then update live. So that's just a little snapshot. It's the same basic engine that IBM has been using internally, and a lot of our customers, literally 4,000 odd customers in Australia, use the same piece of technology. It's now applied to the revenue and pipeline generation process, I think pretty much for the first time using this sort of intellectual property.